The word pub means far more to the people of Britain than its literal definition. It's a cultural thing. It's a unity thing. It's a community thing. It's like what a watering hole is to animals. It's a source to replenish your strength and your sense of humour. Many people today, like the older generation, have a huge detachment from modern means of entertainment, the internet, and things like this. And you'll find that venues such as pubs, inns, these were the only means that they had to interact with each other. And it was the huge difference between an anti-social existence and some form of happiness and social life. Today's pubs are tragically disappearing, but we're lucky enough to still have a few left.
The Great British Pub, or as I call it, the Battle Cruiser, has been a foundation for friends, family, long before it was granted an official name. Endless couples formed within the walls of these buildings, and dare I say, even more friendships. The term public house, or what we call it today, pub, first appeared in the late 17th century. The term was devised so that people could tell the difference between what we know today as a pub and a private house, which one could not simply just walk in and get pissed as a fart. The term applied to venues open to the public, such as alehouse, taverns and inns. The term became common by Georgian times, and now the people of Britain couldn't imagine calling them anything else. In recent years, the pub scene has taken a turn for the worse, with many being changed or vanishing altogether. For many, which we still see often today, the pub is the only excuse they have to be among other people without finding an excuse to do so.
These venues, which we know as pubs, were huge across the world, be they American bars or German taverns. But it does seem that history has forgotten that. History went a lot longer having these wonderful places than the short time that we are destroying them. And dare I say, the amount of stories which have disappeared are probably so high in number they could never be told.
One thing that heavily damaged the modern pub industry was what we now know as the smoking ban, which came into place in 2007. It then became illegal to smoke in any pub, restaurant, nightclub and most workplaces and even work vehicles anywhere in the UK. Now imagine you're an elderly man who spent his entire life in an older world only to have a new age thrown over you without any good reason. Why would you give custom to a world which is being changed for the worse? But of course, like everything that's globalised or corporatised, the elderly and the world they came from are no longer wanted or needed. To some, this may seem petty, but to write off the ways of the old for the sake of a sweeping rule that seemed to mark the end of days for tribal pubs. Community and individuality has suddenly lost its charm when one law made all properties bow altogether. This took a huge toll on all from pubs to elderly social clubs like the British Legion, places where people simply wanted to be together or even simply be alone among others. Once cigar and pipe-ridden taverns and alehouses have suddenly become places of political correctness with health and safety above customer satisfaction. Not even so much as the right to have an all or non-smoking pub, but an outright ban which dictated to the pub owner what he could or could not do. An internationalist decision which took place in Scotland and Ireland also, a slow drip feed to control communities which should have the right to make the decisions for themselves.
So to start our series, we've come to Wapping, a historical, amazingly interesting area. If the cameraman just turns around, you can see Wapping's history cannot be avoided, even though there's been some horrific attempts to hide it with some modern buildings. But Wapping was heavily bombed during the Second World War, during the Blitz, which meant a lot of it was rebuilt. But they did maintain many of the factories. But what's so interesting about Wapping is what it meant to pirates and pirateers, villains of London. And the pubs in this area were known for harbouring those characters. It was their stomping ground. But, funnily enough, it's also the place where pirates would be executed in Execution Dock, in a place just like this, which we'll go and visit shortly. But the entire place is still littered with the evidence of where Customs and Excise and the Navy would have brought pirates and criminals. And we're also going to look at the site where forced penal deportation would take place, where people would be sent for crimes which no longer warranted the death penalty to Australia or to the West Indies to work against their will. But this area in general, absolutely fascinating, and its pubs we are so lucky to have. We're going to go have a look at them now. Found anything, Lou? Yep. Evidence is littered everywhere as to how historic this area is. So many areas in London, they're completely newly built. You can't even tell it's London. You could be in bloody Tokyo. But here, this is history at its finest. We've got a city which is thousands of years old, and we're always so busy looking for the new things in life when the old is right here waiting for us. You know, it's absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. Just have a quick pan of this lot for me, cameraman. Just have a little so the people can see. And you can come down and see this for yourself. You can come down and see it for free. I wish more people would. Yeah. Yeah.
Hard work.
Hard work. This, which used to have a sign just here, is a place called Dead Man's Hole. And millions of Londoners walk past this all the time, not knowing what it is. In fact, there's a lot of tourists that probably have stopped to check it out more than many Londoners. But this was a morgue during Victorian England. And here there used to be a sign. That door there actually led down to a bunch of rooms where the bodies which would turn up due to the tidal Thames would be dragged, because at the end of the day, whether you was a suicider or murdered, you'd end up there. I've got Luke Uncaged with me. Luke, what do you think?
Honestly, mate, I wouldn't go in there. It's dead in there.
It's dead in there. People are dying to get in there. Right, come here, cameraman. And you can see where it was tiled because of all the blood splatter, which made it easier to clean. So if you look at the actual tiles here, look. But this is only Victorian, you know, so it's relatively recent in comparison with some of the local history. Why don't we, who was it? Someone did a documentary recently, and they actually show you the insides of these rooms on film. But when I went to look for it, it had been removed, unfortunately. So why don't we have a little walk around the other side? Just walk around the other side, Lou. Cameraman. And here, cameraman, come back, because you can see now, where the tide's out, you can see the steps, and you can see the cement running up to it. And this is where you would get hordes of bodies at the end of an evening, or the end of a week, and they'd be dragged up these stairs, down into the morgue, where they'd await burial or burning, or however they wanted to get rid of it. But they preserved this for the public to see. Why they removed the sign, I don't know, but it's another interesting part of London, which I suppose we're lucky to have in a way. But the majority of people wouldn't have wound up in these places deliberately. I mean, yes, there would have been a lot of suicides, but in a time before CCTV, I imagine a lot of the people that were turning up, being dragged up these stairs, had probably been killed. Anyway, interesting stuff.
The Dickens Inn. During the time of Dickens, this pub would have been a warehouse thought to have stored tea. So there was no attendance from the man himself in the drinking venue, but he frequented this area and wrote about it. As a result, his legend helped name this glorious building we have today. The entire building was moved from its original location to avoid demolition. The building was very carefully reconstructed to resemble a traditional 18th century style inn, which managed, like a few buildings did, to evade damage during the Blitz of World War II.
So the pub behind us is actually less impressive historically than some of the others we're going to visit, such as the Prospect of Whitby. It's a place where numerous celebrities will frequent often, just as they stay in the marina here. But it is a beautiful pub, which we are very lucky to have. But we're going to go deeper into history when we look at some even more impressive ones.
Yeah, taste a bit of that, please. See if you like it. And we'll two of them. Two of them then, please, fella. Thank you. What's uncle?
There we go. Yeah, do that, that's fine.
Wunderbar.
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 Looks lovely.
Yeah. Oh, very good, sir.
Thank you very much.
I love this. This is good.
It's natural. There's nothing added. No artificial flavors.
You can tell straight away. It's like,
Thank you very much. Thank you. Take care. Oh, look at that. Have a word.
Get it.
Look at that.
fried properly. So that's hard on the outside, that's soft on the inside. You can see it, eh? You can see it. You can see it. That's properly, that's fresh. Properly done.
No need for close-ups, cameraman. I've got to go for a jam bit, anyway, otherwise, yeah.
Yeah. What's the German word for bra? That's to stop them from flopping.
So yeah, look, what the hell are these?
Got all these cheese, well, these sausages and that. They do this so that it keeps it preserved. Yeah. That'll last for ages. You can just leave that out like that and it's fine. They had to do it because it's so cold in these countries, or you know, the food would go rotten. So for the winter, they'd do this to the meats and stuff like that and stock it up. Like that's why you get a lot of pickled food in Swedish countries and stuff like that, because during the winters nothing grows. So they had to pickle everything so they'd have stocks for the winters.
Well, to do it now, it must still be tasty because they don't need to do it, so they must still do it for a reason.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's just tradition, like it's just the way they do it, and then it gets a certain flavour to it. You won't get it anywhere else.
Is where, if you remember the scene from Unforced Forces, from an episode called He Ain't Heavy, He's My Uncle. This is where Uncle Albert turned up after he'd gone missing. And we're going to be popping to the pub where Rodney was seen walking out of. But this is the scene where they found him after he'd gone on the missing list, and then he sung, Paul McCartney sung the song, We're So Sorry, Uncle Albert. You remember that one? And that was here, it was just in this location here. But we're going to walk on now and go to the Prospect of Whitby, where you'll see Rodney having walked out the door, as well as obviously looking into his genuine history, not his fiction. But have a little pan around for me, Cameron, just so anyone that remembers the series, remember that episode. So here we are at the Prospect of Whitby. We're just about to go and have a look. It was originally named after a famous collier ship which would regularly dock nearby. Before we go in, we're going to have a little look at the outside, and then we're going to have a look at Pelican Stairs. So, Pelican Stairs are the alleyway just to the side of it, and we'll go and have a look now. So come on. And then this is the doorway where the actor that played Rodney came out when they were looking for Uncle Albert in the episode He Ain't Heavy, He's My Uncle. It's also been used in quite a few films, actually. I mean, the pub lays claim to being the oldest riverside pub in London, but so does the town of Ramsgate. There's a little bit of a back and forth between them as to who is the oldest. And you can see right here, the prospect of Whitby, London's oldest riverside inn, circa 1520. And up there, interestingly, is the monarchs that the pub has lived through. So come up a little bit closer for me. See, how interesting is that? So as you can see, so it says established in 1520, and you can see the timelines in which it existed. All those monarchs, all those stories, all those mad things that must have happened across these hundreds of years. Pan down for me to Lou. Lou, could you lead us round to Pelican Stairs, that alleyway there? Thank you. This is Pelican Stairs. And there's a couple stair sets like this in the area. So there's two sets of stairs like this, and they are known as Wapping Old Stairs. These are the Pelican Stairs. So come with me.
Come with me, and you'll be in a state of pure inebriation.
I think he's looking forward to the scotch or the rum. This is the spot most Londoners mistake Captain Kidd for having been hung at. So Lou and myself will have heard across the years countless people point at that noose there. If you just pan over to the noose for me, please, cameraman. And they'll say, that's where Captain Kidd was killed. When in fact, that noose is actually in aid of the memory of a hanging judge. Come down for me.
We've got this noose that was erected in memory of Judge Jeffreys, who was known as the hanging judge because he was notoriously, unforgiving and had very little sympathy for criminals of all sorts, and particularly ruthless. And I love it when we preserve our history in this way. This stuff. This is the type of stuff the left would like us to tear down, because it represents cruelty or whatever else. But no, you should serve as a reminder of what times was really like. And we need to preserve things like this, and it's so nice to see it still standing to this day.
When you're a desperate soul, this sort of alleyway would have been the last thing they ever saw. So welcome to the prospect of Whitby, built in 1520 and originally named the Pelican, obviously the Pelican Stairs. Wapping residents made their living from the river fishermen, sailors, sailmakers and boat builders, also smugglers, thieves and pirates. The Pelican became known as the Devil's Tavern, which is something I was going to speak about shortly, which was because of the company that would keep in these areas. Before being renamed the Prospect of Whitby in the late 18th century. So this entire area was known for heightened riffraff, shall we say, privateers, pirates. A very interesting place for whether you was authorities or on the run. Something very interesting about this pub. Yeah, it does. Something incredibly interesting about the Whitby is it still has a 400-year-old floor and was a site of bare-knuckle boxing. So, as well as pirates,
lunatics of all kinds. Can you imagine it back then? There would have been everyone, from dockers, sailors, pirates, crims,
coppers,
rustlers, you name it. Yeah.
because there was a port down here which we're going to be talking about, which is customs and excise. So whilst the fights were going on, you get the villains putting on bets, and you probably have authorities turning up to watch the fights. But it wasn't just human punch-ups that took place here. They also had cockfights.
Dog fights.
No, Lou. Cockfights.
It's big business.
You can't beat a cockfight. Can't beat a good cockfight.
I don't won every time. I had the biggest cock. He was massive, he was. It's legendary around here. Oh, he's seen the size of Luke's cock.
Oh, mate. Unbeatable. Second to none.
Like a baby's arm.
Trained him up, didn't you?
Shame, really, but he lived about 8 years. And then we ate him. Chris family all sat round eating Luke's cock.
I'm very impressed with the taps. You impressed with the taps? Lovely. This is a lovely bit of Amstel that I'm enjoying.
Yeah.
And the view is second to none. And you can find loads of pubs in London that have got okay views, but can you sit in genuine history whilst doing so? This is truly special, this place. I believe so anyway. I mean, we could just say it for the sake of it, but honestly, I genuinely love this pub. You was talking about how special it was to you before we even got here. Wasn't it the first pub you brought your daughter?
One of, yeah.
One of.
One of took me here. They all made a fuss about her because she was proper cute. Bubba. And yeah, my nan and granddad come down here with me and they was telling me all about it and they used to come, drink around here. A lot of history here, do you know what I mean?
A lot of history here.
Even if it's only recent as, your nan and granddad or whatever,
Yeah.
but it's still here, Because it's circa 1520. Can you imagine that?
And there was a time after the Blitz that this entire area just sat dormant. It was very quiet and left alone. And that was when eventually government bodies and private firms, they came in and turned it into a very modernised area, You can still see a lot of the factories have been sort of maintained, but it's certainly a shadow of its former self.
Yeah.
Getting a bit choppy out there. Oh yeah, a bit close, aren't they? Jesus. Anyway, don't forget about the cockfights, all right? Nice little gibbet over there, look.
Yeah. They used to stick naughty midgets in that.
See it just there?
When they were really bad, chuck them in that as a punishment.
Yeah.
They used to scream for days. Really high pitched, sound like a gnat in your room, like 3 in the morning.
A lot of misbehaved dwarves would find themselves in these sort of miniature gibbets. Look at this beautiful chimney. Look at it. Follow me, cameraman. Follow me. Let's have a little walk through before we go anywhere. And a reminder, this pub has supposed to have been here since King Henry VIII.
Shit the floors.
Yeah.
You think that people have walked through it?
Oh yeah, I mean, not just celebrities nowadays,
Yeah.
but throughout history, genuinely interesting people.
Absolutely fantastic.
The stone here identifies this wall as the boundary between the district of Wapping and Limehouse. It's interesting. Yeah, look. As far as pubs go, I think we're going to give this a 10. Easy 10. For history, for the quality of the booze, just the place in general. The first pub we've done for the series, very pleased with it. Very pleased with it. Prospect of Whitby, ladies and gents, beautiful. But we see here,
That's what it would have looked like as a painting from the time.
sorry ladies, let these ladies pass. Fast as you can. Come back as far as you can, cameraman. See, look, this is what it would have looked like. Which
It would
is
have been back in the day.
identical, really, which is what's so beautiful about it. And if we...
Check the syrup, 1700s.
Yeah? Oh, yeah.
Look, he's got syrup on.
I wonder if it's any reference to the hanging judge.
Might be it.
But if we quickly look as well, if we quickly look at the food, look, top quality. And I've watched other reviews in this place and it is very highly spoken of. It's not just a place for cheap grub, it's apparently very nice. But I can't comment on it because we haven't got time today to stop and eat here. But the pub classics are the usual: scampi, chips, halloumi and chips and so on, sirloin steaks. Absolutely beautiful. If it's as impressive as the drinks, then I'm sure you'll be very happy. Actually, come upstairs for me. Lou, I'm just going to go upstairs quick and have a little look.
Yeah. Cool. Oh, look, that's a real photo.
Yeah, that is.
Look at that.
Is it dated?
That's a proper photo.
Is it dated? It is. Look, 1890, this photo.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's where we were sitting.
Yeah.
There's a drawing. What it was.
Do we have a year? 1950. I even love the stairs.
Henry, look, here's the keys, look.
Yeah.
Under the riverside. Sorry, mate. It's all right, thank you very
Pepe's room. Yep.
So London's oldest riverside inn, built in circa 1520 in the reign of Henry VIII, has catered for the public successfully through the reigns of Henry VIII, Edward VI, Mary, Elizabeth I, James I, Charles I, Commonwealth,
Yeah.
Charles II, James II, William and Mary, and George I, II, III, IV, no, IV, V, no, William IV, sorry, Victoria, Edward VII, George V, Edward VIII.
Deposed king. I mean, I could go stand here all day, but I'm not going to. Okay. There have been numerous. Now, this is one that I'm not going to agree with. Obviously, if Fonz was here, he'd be all over it, like, you know, he'd be sticking to it like jam. There have been numerous sightings of ghosts. Right now, call me a skeptic. Do you think there's ghosts here?
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely. You've seen them.
Yeah.
You've seen them.
Yeah,
What
Barry.
was you drinking on the day?
Drinking?
Yeah.
No, I wasn't drinking. I had the baby with me. But no, the ghost Barry, he walked through it.
Was
He
he?
used to be an ice cream man around here. Got killed.
Was he selling DVDs in
No,
Chinese?
he choked on a cherry. But then he still haunts this place to this day. An ice cream man.
Wapping was a hard place in which to live, work or even pass through. Many a poor soul would have lost their life here in all manner of unnatural ways, and that's very true, because you'd only be punished by law if you was caught, and there's no CCTV. So if you upset someone in these violent pirate areas, you better be ready for whatever might happen. So let's have a look through here before we go in Pepe.
Pepe!
Yeah, I know.
Pepe!
Come up here for me, cameraman.
Yeah, Judge's syrup. Look, real one.
Is it?
And his hammers, look. See it?
Sorry, for those that don't understand what Lou's saying, a syrup is a wig, okay?
Yeah,
That's an
syrup
East End, right, okay?
That's the judge's syrup. Look,
Yeah.
he's got his stamp. That's his wax thing.
That's it. Come up and try and get this document in. So this must be the man himself. The Keeper of His Majesty's Gowl of Newgate, or his deputy. Interesting.
Follow me.
Oh, look, because, right, and here's another point that we're going to get to when we talk about Execution Dock. The manner that they hung many pirates was from very low, so they kicked their legs,
Yeah.
which would give them, the public had their own term for this, which we'll get to in a little while, but this is a depiction of that.
Look at it, it's proper B&Q job, that one, look.
And this is the Smuggler's Bar, because this area was so famous for smugglers, privateers,
Child smugglers.
pirates. Yeah. Jesus, what's wrong with you? This I recognise this painting because it's actually Captain Kidd, who we're going to talk about later, where the rumour of treasure came from. Captain Kidd is the one who allegedly hid his treasure so that the stories of Treasure Island and so on came from the idea of him having hidden his loot somewhere. And I wonder, is this? I'm not sure if that's an image of Captain Kidd, but we'll get to those stories very shortly.
That's lovely.
Oh, look at that. Yeah.
Beautiful.
It's a lot bigger in here than meets the eye.
And it's tilted along. We're going
It's
this
completely pissed, yeah.
way. We're going this way.
Oh, look, even the toilet doors I love. I mean,
I like the creak of the floor.
just because the door's old, I accidentally nearly pushed that open, just out of interest for it. Yeah, right.
Thinking you were going.
I'd love to have seen them fit them a few hundred years ago. For the last bit of the grand tour, we're just going to have a look at the top balcony. It's beautiful.
You could have a little wedding reception.
Oh, it'd be cost you an arm and a leg, I bet. This is the most modern feature of the building out here.
Yeah. Disabled ramps.
Come with us, cameraman.
This is where you can come, have a little fag, stick your arm in bird shit. Lovely.
10 out of 10. Prospect to Whitby. 10 out of 10.
Absolutely, no
Yeah.
question. Lovely stuff.
Through here, boys. Through here. We didn't go this way. And this is the last of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there we are talking about cocks. So you know that we weren't full of it. Okay, or being inappropriate. Lots of cocks. Okay. See that?
Kevin Bacon's been here and all.
Is he?
Yeah.
Look. Richard Burton, Kirk Douglas,
Born round here, innit? You know
Frank
what I mean?
Sinatra, Paul Newman, Judy Garland, Muhammad Ali, Princess Margaret. I imagine far more people than that have actually turned up here.
He was born round here, but that night Bacon.
Come down, mate.
Why are you so afraid? Thank you so much.
Too late, right, that's it. Get her, get her.
Thank you very much.
Take care, thank you very much.
Very hospitable. Thank you.
Beautiful pub as well. If we look up at this sign here, you see King Henry's Stairs, which would have been another route down to the river, to the long stretch of Execution Dock. But if we turn around, is a recent pub named after Captain Kidd. He certainly wouldn't have gone in there. It's not that old, but an interesting pub nonetheless. Cameraman, let's go and have a quick look at the front as we pass. And obviously this pub was named because he was executed in a grisly manner. As we can see, it is a beautiful little pub. Just come with me up to the door, cameraman. And there is the famous noose, which has been put up as an ornament, as a reminder of how the kid died. In tradition with the fact that Customs and Excise and the Navy would sentence pirates, this particular stretch of river now houses the station for Marine Police. So if you come over here to this plaque, this is it. This is the Marine Policing Unit. And we'll see it from behind in a little while. But for over 200 years, police have patrolled the River Thames from this site. Interestingly, the Navy would be the ones who were responsible for punishing pirates and privateers, which is why Execution Dock was built as far as it was outside of the Thames, outside of the actual ground, so that the jurisdiction then fell into the Admiralty, the Navy. Here you go, and here you can see where the police head off from, which has been a 200-year-old tradition. There we go, there's their boats. But for hundreds of years, this place has been where both the authorities and the villains have fought and stood side by side. Yeah? So these are the more famous of the Wapping stairs, because beneath this pub, the town of Ramsgate, is where prisoners would be held, allegedly, before they served their sentence of penal deportation, banishment. And this would be different as to how severe your crime was. So many of these people were allowed to serve their time and return home, but most can't afford that because you had to do it off your own back. So most people couldn't afford to travel from Australia today with minimum wage, never mind back then. And these people would be shipped out to places like the West Indies or to Australia.
Part of the 19 crime system, wasn't it?
Yeah.
There was 19 crimes, and if you committed, I believe it was 5 of them, or 3 of them maybe, as little as that, they were the ones that would get you deported. And they'd stick you on a ship.
And just here, beneath these floors, is where they would be held and led away. But they would also share the space with those that were facing death, because just down here leads to Execution Dock. Execution Dock is the official place where pirates and privateers found themselves a grisly end. So follow me down this alley, please. It's a very famous alley, to those that have lived here and studied the area. But beneath the floor here is where people would have spent their last night, listening to the people upstairs, preparing mentally that they'd never seen home again. But then they're still lucky, considering the penal deportation was actually downgraded from the death penalty. Now at this time of tide, we can't get all the way down, unfortunately, but you'll still be able to see where it was. And these stairs here are a very important part of Wapping's history, London's history. Come up here, cameraman, and face down there for me.
This was the last place some people saw Britain.
Yeah, this was the very last place you'd see it.
Very last place for a lot of people. This would be the last bit of British soil you trod on.
Yeah. And the next thing you knew, the next land you saw could be, and you might not even know where you're being sent to. Next thing you know, you're in Australia, the hottest. You come from England, a cold country. Next thing you know, you're in Australia. Now,
many Londoners speak of the location of the hanging of Captain Kidd. This is the official way he died. Like many others, it had been dragged from Marshalsea Prison in Southwark over the Tower Bridge and through the crowd of onlookers and abusive peasants, and then onto the dock. Story goes that when Kidd was first hung, the structure snapped and he fell to the mud of the Thames, where he became stuck. Legend has it they dragged him out and started again to see the job through. The hanged men would then be left to fill with water over a course of a few days as the tide swept in and out, causing an unpleasant sight and smell for those unlucky enough to see it.
so nowadays, you get a lot of archaeologists, professional and amateur, who are obsessed, quite rightfully, with what's known as mudlarking. And mudlarking is siphoning through the banks of the Thames looking for historic artefacts. And Unfortunately for them, if you find anything too pricey or too interesting, you will have to go and report this to a museum. But the few things they do find, this is the sort of place they find it. Execution dock. An execution dock was a particularly disgusting place because once the bodies had been hung, they would be left, as mentioned, to ferment in the water. So 3 tides, they'd be left in a gibbet, which is a cage, once they had died, and the tide would come in and out 3 times, which would waterlog the bodies, which is where many believe the area name came from of Wapping, because these corpses were allegedly known as whoppers. Whether it's completely true, we're not entirely sure, but the story goes that the corpses that were left here terrify pirates that had been accused of theft or murder at sea, to scare them out of doing so ever again. Thus, the term was known as whoppers. But there was also a disgusting dance which was named after those that died from a short noose, because it was known that the hangmen would not make the rope long enough to snap your neck, meaning you died of slow strangulation in front of the onlookers. You can see it's proper nice bit of grub as well. But that's nice.
Fucking wants to be.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? I think I'll be using the old sandwich menu personally, right? Right. So we've got one complaint to make so far, which is it has a non-smoking garden, which someone's just come out to remind us that it was a non-smoking garden, just in case we hadn't clocked the multiple signs that are listed everywhere. So the beautiful history, second to none at the Ramsgate, but the people that have allowed it to have a non-smoking garden, you've already got a smoking ban on the indoors. Why limit the outdoors?
You're having a bubble, you're just making it uncomfortable for your punters, you know what I mean? Like you've got to walk out the front.
Anyway,
That's going to make it any better.
Other than that, lovely pub, lovely taps. But another interesting thing about this area in general was the press gangs. So if you didn't have enough to worry about with pirates or just punch-ups or murders or falling out with someone in general,
General scallywags.
just general scallywaggery, you also had to worry about the press gangs, which was gangs which were employed by the Admiralty or the Navy, who would basically convince you to join the Navy as if it was a good idea. So they'd turn up and say,
Young man's dream.
yeah,
Come and explore the world with us. Come and find treasure. Come and see the new world. Come and see the new, Americas, the Caribbean, the South Americas, all stuff like that.
next thing you know,
You get the word mugging, where mugging comes from. Now, mugging, basically, everyone used to drink out of tankards pretty much, and mugs. And what they'd do to you, they'd pop a coin in your drink when you weren't looking. And if you got to the bottom of it, boom, and they knocked it back, and you got that coin in your mouth, you've been mugged. You're on the ships, whether you like it or not. We've already paid you. That's how they'd slip you up.
and don't get it wrong, some people were stitched up altogether, so you could just get whacked over the back of the head.
Yep.
Next thing you know, you wake up miles offshore and you're part of a crew.
Yeah, that's where the white headhunter came from. I did a podcast on him, and that's what happened to him in Liverpool. They done him with the old mugging and then smacked him over the nut. And next thing you knew, he's waking up halfway across the world.
So if you was in Wapping over the last few hundred years, on top of piracy, on top of some pretty naughty authorities, you had to watch out for the Navy creeping up on you and taking you halfway across the world. So Wapping, ladies and gents, certainly was an interesting place.